The church was silent, save for the faint creak of the pew under Caleb's trembling weight. At 18, he sat alone, his world collapsing in the dim glow of stained glass. His parents' final words, "You're no son of ours," cutting deeper than the autumn chill seeping through the walls. He clutched his backpack, the only thing they'd left him, and wondered if God had abandoned him too. Caleb had always known he was different. Growing up in the small town of Willow Creek, Tennessee, where every Sunday was a parade of pressed shirts and whispered prayers, he'd buried his truth under layers of fear. But last night, when he'd finally confessed to his parents that he was gay, their love turned to ash. His father's face, usually stoic, twisted with rage. His mother's tears fell not for him, but for the shame he'd brought. By morning, they'd driven him to the church, left him on this bench, and told him to pray for forgiveness. They didn't look back. The oak doors groaned open, and Caleb flinched. He expected another sermon, another voice to tell him he was broken. Instead, a woman stepped inside Laura Bennett, a local librarian in her late 40s, with warm brown eyes and a presence that felt like a soft blanket on a cold night. She didn't attend this church. She wasn't one of Willow Creek's devout. But she'd seen the boy's silhouette through the window as she passed by, his loneliness calling to her like a beacon. "Caleb." Her voice was gentle, testing the air. He looked up, startled, his hazel eyes wide with distrust. "I'm Laura. I saw you from outside. Are you okay?" He wanted to lie, to say he was fine, but the weight of the night pressed the truth out of him. "They left me," he whispered, voice cracking. "My parents. They said I'm wrong." Laura's heart sank. She'd heard stories like this too many, in a town where tradition often smothered compassion. She knelt beside him, ignoring the ache in her knees, and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're not wrong," she said firmly. "You're just you. And that's enough." Caleb's breath hitched. No one had ever said that to him, not his parents, not his pastor, not the friends who'd turned away when rumors about him spread at school. He wanted to believe her, but fear clung to him like damp clothes. "They said God hates me," he murmured, staring at the hymn book beside him, its pages open to a verse about judgment. Laura's jaw tightened. She wasn't religious, but she knew cruelty when she saw it. "God doesn't hate you," she said. "And if he does, then he's not worth praying to." Her words were bold, almost reckless, but they struck a chord in Caleb. For the first time in hours, he felt a flicker of warmth. She sat beside him, not pushing, just listening as he poured out his story, his years of hiding, the bullying at school, the night he'd come out, and the betrayal that followed. Laura didn't interrupt. She let him speak, let his pain fill the space between them. And when he was done, she made a decision that would change both their lives. "Come with me," she said, standing and offering her hand. "You don't have to stay here." Caleb hesitated. He didn't know Laura, didn't know if he could trust her. But the church felt like a tomb, and her eyes held a promise of something better. He took her hand, his fingers trembling, and followed her into the cool evening air. Outside, Willow Creek was quiet, its streets lined with modest homes and flickering streetlights. Laura's car, an old blue sedan, waited nearby. She drove him to her small house on the edge of town, a place filled with books and mismatched furniture, where the air smelled of coffee and lavender. "You can stay here tonight," she said, setting up a blanket on her couch. "We'll figure out tomorrow when it comes." Caleb nodded, too exhausted to argue. As he lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, he felt something he hadn't in years: safe. But safety was fragile, and deep down, he knew his journey was far from over. His parents' rejection was just the beginning, and Willow Creek wasn't a place that forgave easily. Morning light filtered through Laura's curtains, painting the living room in soft golds. Caleb woke to the smell of pancakes and the faint hum of a radio playing old jazz. For a moment, he forgot where he was, forgot the church, the bench, the weight of his parents' words. Then it all rushed back, and his chest tightened. Laura appeared from the kitchen, her hair tied back, a spatula in hand. "Hope you're hungry," she said with a smile that didn't push too hard. "I make a mean blueberry pancake." Caleb sat up, rubbing his eyes. "You didn't have to do this," he said, his voice hoarse from sleep and unshed tears. "I wanted to," Laura replied, setting a plate in front of him. "Eat. Then we'll talk." The pancakes were warm, the blueberries bursting with sweetness, but Caleb barely tasted them. His mind was a storm of questions. Where would he go? Could he ever go home? Did he even want to? Laura watched him, her own breakfast untouched, sensing the turmoil beneath his silence. "I don't know what to do," Caleb admitted finally, pushing his plate away. "I don't have anywhere else." They meant it. "They're not coming back." Laura leaned forward, her elbows on the table. "You don't need them to come back," she said. "You're stronger than you think, Caleb. And you're not alone anymore." Her words were a lifeline, but Caleb wasn't ready to grab it. He'd spent years building walls, hiding who he was to survive. Trusting someone, especially a stranger, felt like stepping off a cliff. But Laura's house, with its cluttered bookshelves and cozy warmth, was the first place in years that didn't feel like a battlefield. That afternoon, Laura took him to the local library where she worked. It was a small building, its walls lined with books that smelled of paper and time. She introduced him to her colleague, Marcus, a lanky man in his 30s with a quick laugh and a rainbow pin on his jacket. "Marcus's family," Laura said, her tone light but meaningful. Caleb caught the hint and felt a spark of hope. Maybe there were others like him here, people who wouldn't turn away. Marcus showed Caleb the library's computer lab, suggesting he use it to look for resources, shelters, support groups, anything to help him plan his next steps. Caleb hesitated, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. He didn't know where to start, and the idea of navigating a world that had already rejected him felt overwhelming. As he searched, a notification popped up on his phone, a text from his older sister, Emily, the only family member who hadn't been home when his parents kicked him out. "Caleb, where are you? I'm so sorry. Please tell me you're okay." His heart raced. Emily had always been his ally, sneaking him comic books when their parents banned them, covering for him when he missed curfew. But could he trust her now, after everything? He showed the text to Laura, who read it carefully. "She sounds worried," she said. "But you don't have to decide anything right now. Take your time." That night, Caleb lay awake on Laura's couch, the text glowing in his mind. He wanted to believe Emily could help, but fear whispered that she'd side with their parents, that her love would come with conditions. He typed a reply, "I'm safe. Don't tell them where I am," and hit send before he could overthink it. The next day, Laura drove him to a nearby community center that hosted a support group for LGBTQ youth. Caleb was nervous, his palms sweaty as they walked inside. The room was small, filled with a dozen teens and young adults, some laughing, others quiet, all carrying their own stories. The group leader, a trans woman named Sam, welcomed Caleb with a warm smile. "You're here," she said. "That's the hardest part." For the first time, Caleb heard stories that echoed his own rejection, fear, but also resilience. He didn't speak much, but listening felt like breathing after being underwater. Laura waited outside, giving him space, and when he emerged, his eyes were brighter, though still guarded. "You okay?" she asked as they drove back. I think so, Caleb said, and for the first time, he almost believed it. Caleb's days began to find a rhythm at Laura's house. Mornings were pancakes or toast, afternoons at the library or community center, evenings filled with quiet conversations over tea. Laura didn't push him to plan his future, but she gently nudged him toward possibilities: GD programs, part-time jobs, even college applications. Caleb soaked it in, but the weight of his past clung to him, heavy as the Tennessee humidity. One afternoon, while shelving books at the library, Caleb overheard a heated conversation outside. Two men, voices sharp with disdain, were talking about that gay kid who'd been abandoned for a reason. Caleb froze, his heart pounding. The words weren't new. He'd heard them at school, at church, but they stung more now, when he was trying to rebuild. Marcus, noticing his distress, pulled him aside. "They're just noise," he said. "You don't owe them anything." But the words lingered, and that night, Caleb's dreams were haunted by his father's voice, calling him a sinner, and his mother's silence, louder than any scream. He woke sweating, the darkness pressing in. Laura found him on the couch, staring at the ceiling. "Nightmare?" she asked softly. He nodded. "I keep thinking, maybe they're right. Maybe I am wrong." Laura sat beside him, her presence steady. "Caleb, listen to me. The only thing wrong is how they treated you. Love isn't a sin, no matter who it's for." Her words were a balm, but doubt was a stubborn weed. The next day, Caleb got another text from Emily. "I'm in town. Can we meet? I need to see you." His stomach twisted. He wanted to see her, to feel the comfort of family, but fear whispered that she'd bring judgment, not love. He showed the text to Laura, who suggested meeting at a neutral Placia coffee shop downtown. The coffee shop was bustling, filled with the clink of cups and the hum of conversation. Caleb sat in a corner booth, his hands wrapped around a mug of hot chocolate, when Emily walked in. She was 22, with the same hazel eyes as Caleb, but her face was drawn with worry. She slid into the booth, reaching for his hand. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't know they'd do this." Caleb pulled his hand back, cautious. "Did you know how they felt about me?" Emily's eyes filled with tears. "I knew they were strict, but I never thought they'd." She trailed off, shaking her head. "I should have been there. I should have protected you." Her words cracked something in Caleb, but he wasn't ready to forgive, not yet. "Why didn't you tell me it was okay?" he asked. "All those years, you never said anything." Emily looked down, ashamed. "I was scared too," she admitted. "But I'm here now. I want to help." They talked for hours, the conversation raw and halting. Emily told him she'd moved out, renting a small apartment in Nashville, working as a graphic designer. She offered him a place to stay, but Caleb hesitated. He trusted Laura, felt safe with her. Moving to Nashville felt like another leap into the unknown. That night, he told Laura about the meeting. "She wants me to live with her," he said, his voice uncertain. "But I don't know if I can trust her yet." Laura nodded, her eyes kind. "You don't have to decide now. Trust takes time. Caleb, give yourself that." The next week, Caleb returned to the support group, feeling braver. He shared a little of his story, his voice shaking but growing stronger. The group listened, their nods and smiles wrapping him in a warmth he hadn't known he needed. Sam, the leader, pulled him aside after. "You're finding your voice," she said. "That's power." Caleb felt a spark of strength, small but growing. But Willow Creek was still a minefield, and whispers about him were spreading. He knew he couldn't stay hidden forever, and sooner or later, He'd have to face the town and maybe his parents shit on. The air in Willow Creek grew colder as October settled in, mirroring the chill Caleb felt when he saw his parents' car parked outside the library one afternoon. His heart stopped. He ducked behind a shelf, his breath shallow, watching through the window as his father stepped out, his face stern, and his mother followed, her eyes downcast. They hadn't come to apologize. He knew that look. They wanted control. Laura noticed his panic and hurried over. "Caleb, what's wrong?" "They're here," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "My parents." Laura's face hardened. She glanced outside, then back at him. "You don't have to see them. Not now. Not ever. If you don't want to." But Caleb's fear was tangled with something else, anger. Maybe. Or a need to prove he wasn't broken. "I want to know why," he said, his voice trembling but resolute. "Why they did this?" Laura nodded, her hand on his arm. "Okay. But I'm right here with you." They stepped outside, the autumn wind biting at Caleb's skin. His father's eyes locked onto him, cold and unyielding. "Caleb," he said, his voice like gravel. "We need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about," Caleb said, surprising himself with his steadiness. "You left me." His mother's face crumpled, but she didn't speak. His father stepped closer. "We did what was right. You need to come home. Get help. Fix this." "Fix me." Caleb's voice cracked, but he stood taller. "There's nothing to fix. I'm not a mistake." Laura stepped forward, her presence a shield. "He's not going anywhere with you," she said. "He's safe now. Loved. You don't get to take that away." His father's face reddened. "This is family business," he snapped. "You have no right." "I have every right," Laura shot back. "You abandoned him." "I didn't." The standoff drew as passers-by slowed, whispers rippling through the street. Caleb felt exposed, but Laura's strength anchored him. His mother finally spoke, her voice small. "Caleb, we just want what's best for you." "Then why did you leave me?" he asked, tears spilling over. "You were supposed to love me." She had no answer. His father grabbed her arm, pulling her back to the car. "This isn't over," he said, glaring at Caleb. "You'll see we're right." As they drove away, Caleb's legs buckled. Laura caught him, guiding him back inside. "You were brave," she said. "Braver than they'll ever be." That night, Caleb couldn't sleep. His parents' words echoed, but so did Laura's. He thought of Emily, of the support group, of Marcus's rainbow pin. He wasn't alone anymore, but the town felt smaller, its judgment heavier. He knew he'd have to decide soon: stay in Willow Creek, face the whispers, or leave for a fresh start. The next day, Emily called. "I heard what happened," she said. "I'm coming to see you." No arguments. Her tone was fierce, protective, and Caleb felt a flicker of hope. When she arrived, she hugged him so tightly he could barely breathe. "I'm not them," she whispered. "I'm your family." They spent the day together, walking through a park, talking about everything and nothing. Emily told him about Nashville, its music, its diversity, its promise of a life where he could be himself. "Come with me," she said. "Not forever. Just try it." Caleb wanted to say yes, but Laura's house was his safe haven, and leaving felt like betraying her. He promised Emily he'd think about it, but the decision weighed on him, heavy as the church bench where it all began. Caleb stood at a crossroads, torn between the safety of Laura's home and the pull of a new life with Emily in Nashville. Willow Creek streets, once familiar, now felt like a maze of judgment. Each glance from a neighbor a reminder of his parents' rejection, He needed to choose. But every option felt like a leap into the dark. Laura noticed his restlessness. Over dinner spaghetti with homemade sauce, she broached the subject. "You've got a big heart, Caleb," she said. "But you can't carry this town's weight forever. What do you want?" He didn't know. He wanted safety, love, a place to belong. Laura had given him that. But Nashville promised freedom, a chance to be himself without fear. "I don't want to leave you," he admitted, his voice small. Laura smiled, her eyes crinkling. "You're not leaving me. You're building your life. I'll always be here, cheering you on." Her words loosened something in him, but doubt lingered. What if Nashville wasn't what he hoped? What if Emily's love faltered like his parents'? The questions kept him up, staring at the ceiling, until a knock at the door startled him. It was Sam from the support group, holding a flyer for a youth arts program in Nashville. "Heard you might be heading that way," she said with a grin. "Thought this could be a start. You're good with words, Caleb. Maybe you've got stories to tell." The flyer sparked something in him, a memory of writing poems in secret, hiding them from his parents. He'd always loved words, the way they could capture pain and hope. Maybe Nashville could be a place to share them. The next day, Caleb and Emily drove to Nashville for a trial visit. The city buzzed with Life Street musicians, colorful murals, people who didn't stare or whisper. Emily's apartment was small but vibrant, filled with her artwork and plants. "You'd have the couch," she said, laughing. "It's not much, but it's yours." They spent the day exploring coffee shops, bookstores, a park where a pride flag waved proudly. Caleb felt a weight lift, but fear crept in too. Could he really start over? That night, he joined Emily at a local open mic, where young artists shared poetry and songs. One performer, a guy about his age named Jamie, read a poem about loving himself despite his family's rejection. Caleb's heart raced as he saw himself in those words. And when Jamie's eyes met his, there was a spark of connection. After the event, Jamie approached him, his smile shy but warm. "You new here?" he asked. Caleb nodded, stumbling over his words. Jamie's ease, his openness about being gay, was something Caleb had never seen in Willow Creek. They talked for hours, and when Jamie invited him to another open mic, Caleb felt a flutter of something new, hope. Maybe, or the start of something more. Back at Laura's, Caleb told her about Nashville, about Jamie, about the arts program. "It sounds like you found a piece of yourself there," she said, her voice proud but tinged with sadness. "I don't want to lose you," Caleb said, his throat tight. "You won't," Laura promised. "You're my family now, Caleb. Distance doesn't change that." As he packed a small bag for Nashville, Caleb felt the weight of his past and the pull of his future. He was scared, but for the first time, he felt ready to face it. Caleb's first week in Nashville was a whirlwind. Emily's couch became his bed, her apartment his sanctuary. The city pulsed with possibility, but it also overwhelmed him. Every street corner, every new face, felt like a test of his courage. He clung to the arts program flyer, its edges worn from his nervous fingers, and signed up for a poetry workshop. The workshop was held in a community center, its walls covered in vibrant murals. Caleb sat in the back, his notebook clutched tightly, watching others share their work. When it was his turn, his voice shook as he read a poem about the church bench, the weight of abandonment woven into every line. The room was silent, then erupted in snaps and murmurs of support. Jamie, who was in the group, caught his eye and smiled, his expression saying, "I see you." After class, Jamie invited Caleb for coffee. They walked to a nearby cafe, the air crisp with fall. Jamie was 19, with curly blonde hair and a laugh that made Caleb's nerves settle. Your poem was raw, Jamie said. You've got a gift. Caleb blushed and used to praise. It's just my life, he said. I don't know if it's good. It's honest, Jamie replied. That's what matters. Their coffee dates became a routine, each one peeling back layers of Caleb's guard. Jamie shared his own story coming out at 16, leaving a small town in Georgia, finding a chosen family in Nashville. It gets better, he told Caleb. Not perfect, but better. But Willow Creek wasn't done with Caleb. One evening, Emily got a call from their mother. They want to meet, she told Caleb, her face tense. They're coming to Nashville tomorrow. Caleb's stomach dropped. He hadn't seen them since the library confrontation, and the thought of facing them again made his skin crawl. What do they want? He asked. I don't know, Emily admitted. But you don't have to see them alone. I'll be there. Laura's coming too. Laura drove up the next morning, her presence a steady anchor. They met at a quiet park, the kind of place where hard conversations could breathe. Caleb's parents stood stiffly by a picnic table, his father's arms crossed, his mother's eyes red. Caleb stood between Emily and Laura, drawing strength from them. We made a mistake, his mother said, her voice trembling. We want you to come home. Caleb's heart twisted, but he saw the truth in their faces, not love, but guilt. You didn't want me, he said, his voice steady despite the pain. You left me because of who I am. His father's jaw tightened. We're trying to fix this. Caleb, you need to meet us halfway. No, Caleb said, surprising himself. I don't. I'm building my life now. Without your rules. Laura squeezed his shoulder. Proud. Emily stepped forward, her voice fierce. He's not your project. He's my brother, and he's perfect as he is. His parents left, their silence louder than words. Caleb felt a mix of grief and freedom. He'd closed a door, but others were opening ones he hadn't dared imagine. That night, Jamie invited him to a queer poetry slam. Caleb read another poem, this one about finding light after darkness. The crowd cheered, and Jamie's hand brushed his. A quiet promise. Caleb realized he was starting to believe in better days. Nashville became Caleb's canvas, each day a brushstroke toward a new self. The poetry workshop grew into his haven, where words poured out like water, washing away years of silence. Jamie was a constant presence, his encouragement a light in Caleb's still healing heart. Their friendship was tiptoeing toward something more. But Caleb hesitated, afraid of losing the one person who saw him so clearly. One evening, as they walked along the Cumberland River, Jamie stopped, his eyes catching the sunset's glow. Caleb, he said, his voice soft but serious. You don't have to hide with me. I like you. All of you. Caleb's breath caught. He'd never let himself dream of Thea's a boy who wanted him. Not despite who he was, but because of it. I like you too, he whispered, his heart pounding. Jamie's smile was brighter than the city lights, and when their hands brushed, Caleb didn't pull away. But healing wasn't linear. Some nights, Caleb woke gasping, dreams of the church bench clawing at him. Laura's weekly calls kept him grounded, her voice a reminder of the woman who'd saved him when he had nothing. You're writing your own story now, she told him. Don't let the past steal your pen. Emily, too, was a rock, helping him navigate practicalities enrolling in a GED program, applying for a part-time job at a bookstore. She teased him about Jamie, her eyes sparkling. You're glowing, little brother, she said. Love looks good on you. But Willow Creek's shadow lingered. One day, a letter arrived from Caleb's pastor, urging him to repent and return to the church. The words burned, reopening old wounds. Caleb showed the letter to Jamie, who tore it in half. "They don't get to define you," he said fiercely. "You do." Inspired, Caleb poured his anger into a new poem, one that named his pain and reclaimed his power. He performed it at the next poetry slam, his voice steady, the words raw and unapologetic. The crowd roared, and Jamie pulled him into a hug, whispering, "That's my guy." The bookstore job gave Caleb structure, and the arts program gave him purpose. He started mentoring younger teens in the workshop, sharing his story to help them find theirs. Sam, the support group leader, joined one session, her pride evident. "You're a light, Caleb," she said. "Don't ever dim it." As winter approached, Caleb and Jamie grew closer, their bond deepening through late-night talks and shared dreams. Caleb felt himself unfolding, his heart no longer a locked door. But he knew one final step remained facing Willow Creek, not to return, but to say goodbye on his terms. He called Laura, who agreed to go with him. "You're ready," she said, "and I'll be right there." Caleb wasn't sure what he'd find in Willow Creek, but he knew he wasn't the boy left on the church bench anymore. He was stronger, braver, and surrounded by love he'd never thought possible. The drive to Willow Creek felt like crossing a bridge to another life. Caleb sat in Laura's passenger seat, his hands fidgeting, Jamie's texts lighting up his phone with encouragement. "You've got this," Jamie wrote. "You're unstoppable." Caleb smiled, drawing strength from the boy who'd become his anchor. The town looked smaller, its streets narrower, its judgment heavier in the winter light. Laura parked outside the church, the place where Caleb's world had shattered. He stepped out, the air cold against his skin, and stared at the bench through the window. It looked ordinary now, just wood and varnish, not the altar of his pain. "I need to go inside," he said, his voice steady. Laura nodded. "I'm right here." The church was empty, the silence heavy. Caleb walked to the bench, running his fingers over its surface. He thought of that night, the fear, the loneliness, but also of Laura's hand. Her words, "You're enough." He sat down, not as the broken boy he'd been, but as the man he was becoming. He pulled out his notebook and wrote a letter not to his parents, but to himself. "You are not a sin. You are love, courage, a story still unfolding." He tore the page out and left it on the bench, a quiet act of reclaiming his space. Outside, Laura waited, her smile warm. "Feel lighter?" she asked. "Yeah," Caleb said, and he meant it. They drove to the town square, where Caleb had one more stop, the library. Marcus was there, his rainbow pin gleaming. "Heard you're a poet now," he said, grinning. "Willow Creek's loss is Nashville's gain." Caleb laughed, something he hadn't done in this town before. He thanked Marcus, then hugged Laura tightly. "You saved me," he whispered. "You saved yourself," she said. "I just gave you a place to start." Back in Nashville, Caleb's life bloomed. He aced his GED, got a scholarship for a community college writing program, and moved into a small apartment with Jamie. Their relationship grew, rooted in trust and shared dreams. Emily visited often, her pride in Caleb a constant light. Laura came too, her house still a second home. One spring evening, Caleb performed at a citywide poetry festival, his words soaring over a crowd of hundreds. He spoke of benches and betrayal, of love and found family, of a boy who learned to stand tall. The applause was thunderous, but it was Jamie's hand in his, Laura's tearful smile, and Emily's cheer that mattered most. Caleb knew he'd always carry scars, but they were part of his story, not its end. He'd been left on a church bench, deemed a sin, but one woman's love had shown him he was a son worthy, whole, and free.